Hello, I'm Alex Davies, founder of Wealth Club, and today I'm with Simon King of Octopus Ventures to talk about the Octopus Ventures EIS service. Hello, Simon. Firstly, tell me about Octopus and give me a bit of background about yourself.
Of course, Alex. Well, thanks for having me here. Octopus Ventures is a venture capital firm based in London and New York. We've got more than 60 people split across those two offices. And really, we invest in early stage technology companies that are capable of phenomenal growth. And hopefully we're going to invest in category defining and market leading businesses going forwards. So we as a team invest in 5 different category areas: fintech, deep tech, health tech, consumer, and B2B software. And the team has been investing together since 2007, so for the last 15 years or so. And that means collectively we've invested in hundreds of companies, and we've currently got more than 130 companies in our portfolio of investments, and they will include some household names that I'm sure you'll have come across before, the likes of Cazoo, bought by many, and some recent exits, including Zoopla, Wave Optics, and Depop. I've been with the team for the last 9 years, and before joining I was an academic, so I have a background in hard sciences, physics, chemistry, and materials. And within the team, I sit in our deep tech sub-team, so specialist pod, investing in IP-rich platform technology businesses. And I'm also responsible for our new investment strategy across the team as well.
And the Octopus Ventures EIS service, what does it aim to do for investors?
Yeah, of course. Well, we aim to deliver a great return for investors by making investments on their behalf in EIS qualifying companies. So early stage technology companies capable of incredible growth. We feel we're able to do this because, as I mentioned, we've been doing this together as a team for 15 years, investing principally from Titan Venture Capital Trust Fund. And really, the Ventures EIS service will give the underlying investors the ability to take EIS exposure to some of the companies that we're already looking at and investing in day to day, because we're investing on behalf of Titan.
And how many companies would an EIS investor typically invest in?
Yeah, so typically an investor will have a portfolio of 10 to 15 companies on average. And really they're going to be a variety of companies across those different subsectors and sectors that I mentioned. And we believe that gives a nice healthy balance between diversity in a portfolio, but also enough concentration that any winners in that portfolio, any stars, are really going to be able to drive the performance overall of the portfolio.
And what are the characteristics of the companies you're looking for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we always look at the team as the number one priority when we're investing in early stage companies, and really because that's the most important thing when it comes to these small companies. You know, when we look at a team, there are lots of different characteristics that we're trying to evaluate when we're having conversations with them. But I think one of the most important for us is experience. And it might be experience in building startups. So, for example, we've invested in a business called Cazoo, and Alex Chesterman, who was the founder, was previously the founder of Zoopla, and before that, one of the businesses that went in to make LoveFilm. So, you know, he has the experience of being able to grow and build billion-dollar companies starting from scratch. But equally, it might be specialist experience in a particular subject or area or product. So, for example, we're an investor in a business called Elvie that builds hardware and consumer devices for women at different stages of their life, the most prominent of which is a completely silent electric breast pump. And Tanya, the CEO and founder, is a first-time founder of that business, but she comes from a background in reproductive health, which really gives her the kind of understanding of the target market and the types of products that people will want to buy.
And how do you come across these companies?
Yeah, so I think a big part of how we find these companies is because entrepreneurs now seek us out. As I mentioned, we've been investing together for the last 15 years. We have built a really strong track record over that time by investing in great companies, by exiting great companies. And that means that the Octopus Ventures brand is well known and recognized in the sort of startup market and ecosystem. And so entrepreneurs will seek us out. And that means we have something like 3,000 to 5,000 businesses approaching us each year, and we'll be investing in something like 20 to 40 of those. I think the other important factor in us being able to find great businesses to invest in is this sort of specialist teams that I mentioned, and we call them internally pods. And as I mentioned, they're fintech, health tech, deep tech, consumer, and B2B software. But really what that means that we can do is build expertise and critically networks in each of those different areas. And so we're able to find companies and the best companies within each of those different subsectors because we know the other investors, we know the entrepreneurs, and we're able to build that knowledge and network over time.
Okay, so the EIS service only launched last year. What have you invested in so far?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so we've now fully invested tranche 1 and are into investing tranche 2. I can't talk about all of the companies that we've invested in from tranche 1 because unfortunately not all of them are announced yet. But a few which have been announced include XYZ Reality, which is an augmented reality business that's focused on construction technology. And their premise is, today structural engineers and architects are designing buildings in 3D in computers. And obviously when we construct the buildings, they're in 3D, but in between people are printing out 2D representations and handing them to the builders to manufacture these things. What if we could take those 3D models and put them in front of people's faces and view when they're looking at where this building is going to be and allowing them to see digitally what they're going to create. The wall should be there should be a hole here, don't drill a hole over there. And in that way they can help prevent all kinds of rework and mistakes on building sites. And another example might be iSize, which is a business we just invested in recently, with technology that has come out of a professor from UCL. And what they do is they enable compression of videos to much smaller sizes so that you can send less data over the internet. And as I think most people are aware, video is exploding in terms of its proliferation across the internet and the type of media that we consume. And it's also consuming a lot of the data that's going over the different pipes and wires when it's being transmitted from one place to another. And that's both phenomenally expensive in terms of the cost of delivering it, but also not great for the environment because of the energy that it consumes. So what these guys do is they have a proprietary way of using machine learning and artificial intelligence to really compress and squash those videos so they're much smaller size and push them through the pipes without any loss of quality. So as an end user or consumer, you can look at these videos and you wouldn't notice any different from the original. So what they're really doing is throwing away the unnecessary bits of the information to make them smaller as it goes through the pipes.
Yeah. And what sort of help do you give these investee companies once you've invested?
Well, we're quite an active investor, so we almost always take a board seat at these companies. And really over the course of the last 10, 15 years, we've built up a depth of knowledge about the challenges that small companies are going to face as they scale, right? As they introduce new employees, as they encounter any of the challenges that small companies will face, growing in new markets. And as a result, we've built a platform of different services to help those companies tackle the challenges. One of those services is a talent function. So we now have employees who work for us who are helping the portfolio companies really understand who they need to hire, how they need to hire, and how they should set up their own internal kind of HR departments in order to deal with just the phenomenal growth that they're going to see in terms of employees over hopefully the next few years of their journey. And that's just one among many different services that we have. Another is that we have a small office in New York, as I mentioned. And really the folk that are out there, they are specialists in helping companies move across the Atlantic, because one of the things that we commonly observed was companies started thinking about expansion to the US probably too early, and they set up offices, they put people on the ground, and it really didn't work for them, and they wasted money and time and effort going over there. So we set up the New York office with the view of trying to understand when is the right time, so that we could advise the companies on how to do it effectively and how to do it most efficiently, and really not waste that time or effort or money. But also, once the company's made the decision, yes, I want to expand into the US, we can help them with all of the information that we've gathered from that New York office. Where should I go? Is it East Coast, West Coast, or somewhere in between? How much does a sales rep cost to hire, in terms of the salary in the US versus the UK or Europe? What do I do about health insurance? What do I do about holiday? These are all the kinds of questions that companies will have to answer before they set up an office in the US, and we can help them do that.
Clearly it's too early for the EIS to have had any exits yet, but can you talk to me about, you've had a lot of, the ventures team have had a lot of exits this year. Can you talk to me about some of them?
Yeah, of course. I think the last count we've exited 7 or 8 businesses so far during the course of 2021. But you're right, it's still a little bit early for those to be Ventures EIS service businesses. But because we have obviously the track record of investing from Titan and Eureka EIS in the past, we do have exits that are coming through from businesses that we've invested a few years ago. There's been some absolutely fantastic companies that we've sold this year. So one such business would be Depop, which is a kind of mobile commerce place crossed with a social network, so it allows people to sell articles of clothing across the social network from their phone. And that was acquired by Etsy for over $1 billion. And we first had invested in that business in 2018, and it's grown at more than 100% year on year since our investment. So that's fantastic. Also, we sold a business called Wave Optics earlier this year, and I was particularly excited by that one because I was on the board when we sold it. And that's another business in the augmented reality space. And so that company was developing display modules for augmented reality glasses. And really, what that means is augmented reality is the ability to overlay a digital image or reality on top of the real world. So in an ideal world, and many people, including many of the big tech companies, believe this is the future, you'd be able to wear a pair of glasses like mine, and instead of just seeing you through them, I'd be able to see you with a bunch of information, potentially an auto cue that's sitting directly in front of me, and all kinds of things. And really, I think that's going to open a phenomenal number of possibilities, both for consumers, but also for enterprise in many different areas. But one of the pinch points, because this technology is really on a maturity path, has been building the displays. You have to be able to see through a lens and piece of glass like this, but also overlay a digital image that sits on top. And that's where Wave Optics comes in. They had built a phenomenal technology to enable this to actually happen, and they were acquired earlier this year by Snap, who was actually one of their customers.
What sort of timescale should investors be expecting an exit?
Yeah, so obviously these are early stage companies at the point we invest, and we wouldn't expect to see exits before 5 years, although it does happen from time to time. But at the same time, exits might come later than 10 years. If we still continue to see the growth in these companies over time. I would expect on average they'd be somewhere in between. But as I mentioned, Depop, we invested in 2018, sold this year. Wave Optics, we invested in 2016 and was sold this year. Calastone, we invested actually over 10 years ago.
It's very high risk, obviously, investing in EIS. Typically in this portfolio, how many companies would you expect to prosper? How many would you expect to fail?
That's a good question. You're right. There will be failures when we make investments in these companies. We wouldn't have the successes at the scale that we do if we weren't also seeing some of those failures, because we need to be taking that risk. Typically, we point to a portfolio of in a portfolio of 10, for example, you might expect to see half of those either returning just the capital that was invested, or some or none of the capital that was invested. And really it's a small number, 1 or 2, that you'd expect to be returning more than 10 times the capital that you put in at the first point. And the other 2 or 3 will be somewhere in between, in the kind of 2 to 5 times return. And really that's what the sort of industry average numbers show. But obviously it comes down to the companies that you invest in, and do they do well or do they not?
What are the challenges you are facing as a manager at the moment?
The European and in particular UK startup ecosystem is just going from strength to strength at the moment, and I think that's fantastic. But one of the challenges it does breed is we're starting to see more competition. So there are venture capital firms coming across from the US to look at the UK and Europe, and from Asia as well. And indeed, there are more VC firms that are being created in the UK and Europe itself. So I think that actually is a great thing, because it pushes us to be better and to move quicker and to up our game ourselves. But we do have to respond to that. And I think we have done. We've been building our team over the last few years. And we've also been reconsidering our investment processes. How do we make sure that we're competitive in terms of the speed that we have to move at, but equally that we're doing the proper levels of diligence so that we can make great investment decisions.
Finally, Simon, if I want to put money in a EIS this year, why should I invest with you?
So I think you should give your money to us, because we have a track record of investing in some of the best and highest profile and highest returning companies in the UK over the last 15 years. And really, what does that mean? Well, it means that we have the brand and reputation to be able to attract great companies, and they seek us out, which means we see great deal flow. It also means that we have the experience and have built the systems and processes over that time to be able to down select through all the thousands of companies that come to us, to be able to pick the gems and the companies that we believe are going to be winners. It means that we have the experience from having managed a portfolio over that time to understand what their challenges are going to be, where we need to be helpful, where we can be helpful, and that we've built this platform of portfolio services such as talent, such as the office in New York, to be able to help those companies continue to grow. And it means we've got the experience to be able to exit those businesses successfully, as we've shown we have done and can do with the likes of Depop, with the likes of Zoopla, with the likes of Wave Optics. I think in addition to that, we have built these specialist sub-teams that focus on fintech, deep tech, consumer, health tech, and B2B software over the last few years. And that really means we have the expertise and the networks within each of those little teams that enable us as an organization to be able to invest in companies from quantum computing through to synthetic biology companies, through to deep capital markets and fintech businesses. And I think there are very few other fund managers who are able to say all those things.
Simon King of Octopus Ventures, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.